connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. A truce between Israel and Hamas enters its sixth day with additional hostages released in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. President Marcos Jr. said that Noraline Babadilla had been set free by the extremist Hamas group and is currently in Israel. The Philippines should continue working and engaging with like-minded states in addressing its concerns in the West Philippine Sea in the coming year. This was the key takeaway from a forum titled Fostering Cooperation in the Indo-Pacific Towards 2024, held on Tuesday. A truce between Israel and Hamas entered its sixth day with additional hostages released in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. In accordance with an extended ceasefire, 12 more hostages were released from Gaza captivity on Tuesday, while peace negotiators attempted to bring an end to the 7-week Israel-Hamas conflict. The Israeli Prime Minister's office announced the release of 10 Israelis and 2 Thais. The army claimed the individuals were inside Israeli territory and were turned over to the Red Cross. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesman Majed Al-Ansari said freed Israelis were 9 women and a girl, and they included a Filipina dual national and 2 Argentinian dual nationals. A total of 81 hostages held in Gaza have now been released during a truce between Israel and Hamas.
Current number of hostages held by Hamas is 173, including 6 children under the age of 18 who were not released in the original 4-day hostage release pause. Shockingly, we've all seen that unforgettable image of 10-month-old Kfir Bibas and his 4-year-old brother who remain captive. 173 hostages include 17 foreign nationals, not including dual citizens. There have been 76 hostages released to date, among them 58 Israeli citizens. There are also 4 abductees currently being held in Gaza that predate the 7th of October.
Israel has released 30 more Palestinian detainees tonight as part of its agreement with Hamas, raising the total to 180. The doctor in charge of treating the freed Thai hostages at the Shamir Medical Center in Bir Yaakov states said that they lost a significant amount of their weight in such a short time, 10% or more, when they arrived at the emergency ward.
Because one of the problems coming back from captivity after being in starvation mode is that you need to do the refeeding very slowly and very cautiously, because otherwise there's what's called the refeeding syndrome that can cause death. For the Israelis that came back, the families, the press, everyone was waiting for them. For the Thai workers that came back from captivity, we were their families. We are their families. With the IDF, there was a special team, special squad that was with us from a month ago when we started the preparation.
For the first time since their return home on November 26, 4-year-old Oriya, 8-year-old Yuval, and their eldest sister, 10-year-old Ofri Brotz, met with their dog Rodney at the Schneider Children's Medical Center in Israel's Petah Tikva. Video released by the Israeli army shows French-Israeli 12-year-old Eitan Yahalomi hugging his mother, Bat-Shiva, after he was released overnight by the Hamas militants. Families of Israeli captives freed overnight on November 24 expressed their gratitude and gladness as the Israel-Hamas truce is prolonged for an additional 2 days.
On October 7th, my father was murdered in the shelter. My mother was kidnapped to Gaza along with my brother, who also lives in the kibbutz. Last Thursday, we were told my mother was to be released. We were very happy, but also wanted to keep a low profile due to the uncertainty of negotiation with terrorists. When we saw her at the hospital, the reunion was filled with emotions. She immediately asked about my father, who she didn't know was murdered, and my brother, who she didn't know was kidnapped. She isn't in a good medical state because she didn't receive the medication she needed.
That we just had two of our beloved kids, Sahar, who's 16 years old, and Erez, who's 12 years old, just being released from the Hamas and landed on this hospital roof with a chopper by the military. And we are full with joy and happiness, but at the same time we're very worried about the father, my cousin Ofer Calderon, who's still in captivity. And I'd like to thank President Biden for his amazing support in making this moment a reality, and also to the French President Emmanuel Macron and the embassy here in Israel, the French embassy, for their amazing support.
Well, we've got Erez and Sahar here, and we're very, very happy. We got them home. They're here. In a few minutes, we'll be hugged. And now we have to go on a new way. We have to get Ofer and the rest of the kidnaps and bring them here.
During a demonstration in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square, people gathered with the relatives of the Bibas family to demand the release of Kefir, a 10-month-old baby who is the youngest prisoner held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip, together with his 4-year-old brother Ariel and their parents Yarden and Sherry. Kefir Bibas, along with his brother Ariel and parents, was abducted by gunmen from the Nir Oz kibbutz near the Gaza border when he was just 9 months old.
Hamas took them, and Hamas is required to bring them back right now. The responsible for their health and their freedom is directly in Hamas's hand.
מה עשה התינוק הזה? מה עשה אריאל אח שלו בן 4? מה, הוא קם בבוקר לחגיגת שמחת תורה? זה כל החטא שלו? כל החטא שלו זה שהוא רוצה לחגוג חג יהודי? בגלל שהוא יהודי?
During a visit, meanwhile, to an Israeli army intelligence branch, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared, "We are committed to bringing back all the hostages."
אנחנו מחויבים להשלים את המשימות שלנו, שחרור כל החטופים, חיסול ארגון הטרור הזה מעל הקרקע, מתחת לקרקע, וכמובן להבטיח שעזה לא תחזור להיות מה שהייתה, לא תהווה יותר איום על מדינת ישראל.
Meanwhile, the U.S. dispatched the first of 3 military planes to Egypt with essential humanitarian goods for Gaza. The flights began on the same day that President Joe Biden announced he would use the truce's extension to get more aid into Gaza, and while efforts by other countries to further extend the ceasefire are ongoing.
How concerned are you that the longer this truce lasts, now 6 days, that Hamas will benefit? And how do you weigh that?
It's a real risk. You have to expect a group like Hamas, a terrorist group, which clearly doesn't abide by laws of war, will try to take advantage of any pause in the fighting for their own benefit. So we're watching that closely, as well as our Israeli counterparts. You can bet that they're watching that closely. And I don't want to speak for the Israelis, but I mean, this is a calculated risk that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet are willing to take in order to get those hostages out.
Because of the extreme need, UN humanitarians echoed the UN Secretary General in calling for both an end to hostilities and increased relief deliveries to the ravaged enclave.
We have 1.8 million people displaced now, all of them bearing the marks of these horrendous attacks. You know, you really do see sorrow and stress sort of taking root here in Gaza. So yes, there are long queues. You see queues for 2-3 hours of adolescent girls just trying to go to the bathroom, and they will say time and again, you know, why we've lost everything, why are we being denied our dignity, our war zones. I see children with horrendous wounds of war in car parks, on makeshift mattresses, in gardens, everywhere. Doctors having to make horrendous decisions on, you know, who they prioritise. I think of the little boy I saw coming from Shifa who'd spent 3 or 4 days on a bus in that 40 kilometres because of checkpoints and so on, had not had any help, and his missing left leg the smell was clear that was decomposing. That boy had shrapnel all over, potentially was blind and had burns to 50% of his body. It's not an outlier. Those wounds are everywhere.
On the 24th of November, WHO carried out an assessment mission to the UNRWA shelters north of Gaza. And the things they noted were the lack of waste collection around the shelters, the extremely limited access to medical consultation. So basically, if you're sick, if your child has diarrhea, if you've got a respiratory infection, you're not going to get you're very unlikely to get any medical care because it just isn't available.
Meanwhile, the future of the Israel-Palestine extended truce is discussed by Majed Al-Ansari, the official spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and counselor to the Prime Minister of Qatar. Let's listen in.
Focus right now is, and our hope is to reach a sustainable truce that would lead to further negotiations and eventually to an end to this iteration of violence, to this war. And we have always said that we need the push of the whole international community to make sure that that happens. However, we are working with what we have. And what we have right now is a provision to the agreement that allows us to extend days as long as Hamas is able to guarantee the release of at least 10 hostages from their side.
However, Israeli government spokesman Eilon Levy said this time, after the atrocities of October 7, they are going to finish the job and topple Hamas.
The road ahead is going to be long. We have set targets, not deadlines. So I don't want to speculate about how long this is going to take, but it will take as long as it has to take, not a day more, not a day less, because we have to be sure that after 16 years of Hamas's reign of terror inside the Gaza Strip, with each successive round ending with a ceasefire in which Hamas was temporarily deterred and then returned to attacking the Israeli people, this time, after the atrocities of October 7th, we are going to finish the job. We are going to topple Hamas from power. We're going to bring security to the people of Israel, and we're going to give new opportunities for the Palestinians as well, at least the Palestinians who realize that terrorism is a dead end and they need a sharp course correction if we're going to see a brighter and more prosperous future for everyone in this region.
Musab al-Brahim, a spokesman for Palestinian Islamic Jihad, told AFP in Khan Yunis that they are ready to continue the political path.
هي حرب حقيقية إدارة ملف التفاوض بطريقة غير مباشرة مع الاحتلال الإسرائيلي، لكن نحن أبلغنا الوسطاء رسالتنا في المقاومة الفلسطينية وفي حركة الجهاد الإسلامي، ملتزمون ما التزم الاحتلال وجاهزون يعني على لإكمال هذا المسار السياسي إذا دفع الاحتلال ثمن ذلك، وسيكون مجبرا على دفع الثمن إذا كان حريص على حياة ومصير أسرى في قبضة المقاومة الفلسطينية.
Meanwhile, President Marcos Jr. said that Noraline Babadilla had been set free by the extremist Hamas group and was currently in Israel. All Filipinos impacted by the conflict between Israel and Hamas, according to Marcos, have been accounted for. Just days after expressing concern for Noraline Babadilla's whereabouts, I'm very happy to announce that Noraline is safely back in Israel, becoming the second Filipino released from Gaza, according to the president, writing on X, which used to be Twitter. With this positive development, he said, I am pleased to inform the nation that all Filipinos affected by the war have been accounted for. According to the president, he sent the Philippine Embassy staff in Tel Aviv instructions to take care of her needs in accordance with Israeli authorities. He also expressed his gratitude to the Israeli authorities for helping Filipinos in Israel and for enabling the release of the Filipino worker. He said, our gratitude also goes to Egypt and the state of Qatar for their crucial role in this process over the past several weeks. Babadilla was set free a few days after President Marcos declared Eleanor Jimmy Pacheco free. Two of the foreigners taken hostage by Hamas on October 7 are Babadilla and Pacheco. Meanwhile, the Department of Foreign Affairs in a statement said the Qatar government mediated the negotiations that allowed the release of Babadilla and previously Pacheco. DFA spokesperson Maria Teresita Daza also extended gratitude to Israel for agreeing to the conditions which facilitated the release of more hostages as well as their assistance to all Filipinos in Israel. One of the architects of the Oslo Accords, the Norwegian Jan Egeland, claims that they are gone. The accords were meant to result in the coexistence of two states, one for Israel and one for Palestine. The goal of the 1993 Oslo Accords was to establish an independent Palestinian state. But since 2014, peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians have been deadlocked.
But the Oslo Accord is gone as an accord. Now there will be another accord, and it will have to be led by the US, the EU, and the Arab countries. I think much of the bargaining has to happen discreetly without the media present, because then people talk to the gallery, and there's so much bitterness and hatred on both sides now that there has to be discreet talks about compromise. However, it cannot be a backroom deal that will be implemented. There has to be ratified by the two peoples for it to become peace. Well, a few-day pause in the fighting is better than zero pause in the fighting, but it hasn't really been a ceasefire. That must be a more prolonged period and hopefully indefinite. We have to have a permanent ceasefire. We have to have all of the border crossings open. And finally, we have to have an end to this dirty idea that you can and should exchange hostages for humanitarian access to children. Hostages are no bargaining chip. Clearly, the leaderships on either side are not at all at the level that they were at the time. Those were visionary leaders. They were strong leaders. They were really leaders. Now we are populists on both sides, really. And then there are 2.3 million people, and they're crammed together in a smaller and smaller territory as Israel bombs its way from north to south. And they also now bomb in the concentrations of people to the south. It is impossible, this situation. So either people have to be allowed into Israel and Egypt, or there is a ceasefire. If not, there will be a bloodbath. Well, it's true that deep crisis can unlock frozen peace talks. I think it should be pretty clear for both the two sides and for the international community that continuous occupation, continuous violence is no way to live for two peoples. It's a humanitarian paradigm, imperative that you speak to the devil to help the people in the depths of hell. It's a saying. So I would speak to anybody really if they would unlock my access to women, children and other in deep suffering. But I'm not partisan to any of these sides, and I have no sympathies for any of them.
The Philippines should continue working and engaging with like-minded states in addressing its concerns in the West Philippine Sea in the coming year. Now, this was the key takeaway from a forum titled Fostering Cooperation in the Indo-Pacific Towards 2024. Strat-based ADR Institute President Victor Andres Dindo Manhit emphasized the Philippines' success in gaining continued support from like-minded states for its arbitral victory and their commitment to upholding the rules-based international order.
In addition to the enormous support of Filipinos in the West Philippine Sea issue, the international community is an advocate of promoting peace and stability in the region. In recent months, like-minded states have repeatedly expressed their support for the Philippines' arbitral victory and have vowed to stand with us in defending a rules-based international order. Our united front allows us to remain firm against aggressive and coercive acts disrupting peace in the region. As we close 2023, the Philippines should be in a better position to confront the risk in the West Philippine Sea by building on its capabilities and ironing out interoperability with like-minded states.
Manhit noted that the Philippines became a focal point of geopolitical tensions in the Indo-Pacific this year due to China's continued gray zone operations in key areas of the West Philippine Sea.
China has continued to intimidate civilian fishing vessels and to provoke rival territorial claims by conducting gray zone operations in key areas of the West Philippine Sea. The most serious of these incidents recorded this year alone is the collision between Chinese and Philippine vessels in the Ayungin Shoal. Philippine vessels have also endured a series of water cannon incidents, and even early on this year, the pointing of military-grade laser. Other states' disinformation tactics have also been at the receiving end. Our country has been on the receiving end of disinformation tactics, especially with the release of the 10-dash line, extending its territorial claim. Every time I see that map, I just smile. How can the tuna be part of China? How can Indian border be part of China? Or how can a place called Bajo de Masinloc, which is part of a municipality called Masinloc, 3 hours by car from where we are, is part of China?
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.